Hi, I'm Mitch Abolafia. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk about book-length manuscripts, and in particular, my new book, Stewards of the Market. My goal is to frame this discussion in the context of organization theory and the contribution that books make to the advancement of that theory. There's a long history of book-length work in organization theory, going back to the foundational works of Selznick, Blau, Gouldner, Crozier, and Perot. These were ethnographic case studies on which we built our understanding of modern bureaucracy. We're doing the same thing with markets today. Most of us are using ethnographic methods to explore the nature of markets beyond price discovery, which is, of course, the primary focus of economics. So what's my book about? Well, the subject is described well in its subtitle, How the Federal Reserve Made Sense of the Financial Crisis. The book draws on verbatim transcripts of closed-door policy meetings at the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, during the first 18 months of the financial crisis from 2007 to 2008. I quoted the discussion of these policy elites to explain how this group, with 12 voting members, came to understand the situation and ultimately to take action. At first, they were confused, and for at least 6 months, there was great doubt about whether there was a crisis. Their interventions in the market were cautious and followed routine procedures. Once Bear Stearns, the fifth largest investment bank, ran out of money, the Fed began to improvise and became the lender of last resort. But even then, they expected that the market would restore itself to stability. Not until a year into the crisis, after the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, the fourth largest investment bank, which led to a freezing up of many financial markets, did the policymakers finally acknowledge the crisis. The book goes on to explore the process of learning in the policy group and how they innovated an activist response. As must already be obvious, this book uses organization theory to analyze Fed behavior. It conceptualizes sense-making as a process of narrative construction. Policymakers used both conventional and idiosyncratic cues to construct stories about what was happening in the macroeconomy. For example, in the beginning of the crisis, a contagion narrative competed with a restoration narrative to explain events, but conventional narrative construction resulted in epistemic failure because neither of the narratives was adequate. Thus, the matching policy decisions they chose were also inadequate. The policymakers were constrained by the institutional logics to which they clung. As the crisis proceeded, they were pushed to improvise and innovate beyond the conventional logics of the market and the state. This account of the Fed's response synthesizes a micro account of sense-making by a policy group with a macro account of the institutional forces that shape sense-making. These macro forces show that the Fed was captured by an overzealous belief in efficiency and the robustness of markets. This is what kept them from understanding the crisis in its early stages. Only when pragmatism trumped ideology did they begin to improvise and eventually to innovate. So what's the value of a book-length account here? One cannot tell this story in an article without flattening out the conflict and the competition in the sense-making process in this group, and obscuring the variety of epistemologies employed by the policymakers. A book-length treatment allowed me to capture the social dynamics within the room over the course of 18 months. It allowed the reader to hear the way that these elite policymakers talk to each other. It gives a sense of the uncertainty and the doubt involved in making high-stakes decisions. These are important things for our field. This type of archival ethnography brings the reader inside the room where the decisions are made. This has largely been missed in our field, making it drier and more abstract than it should be. We need to return to these kind of extended treatments. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your AOM online experience. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have at abolafia@albany.edu. Thanks again.